Hello everyone, this is Gary with your cards of the day, and today, numerologically speaking, we have a day 18-9, which is the Moon and the Hermit. And it's kind of an interesting combination, I always find, because the Moon to me speaks very strongly of intuition, of a very particular and special kind of light in the darkness, and the ability to see things that ordinarily would be not possible to see, and also to see things in a way that ordinarily would not be possible. So it's a very interesting energy, and it's a very intuitive energy. And the Hermit, for me, is a very, very deep, soul-searching, inner dimension kind of energy. It's looking within and trying to discover, in a sense, the secret of ourselves. So we do have quite an interesting mix of energies in the numerology today. In the cards that I'm using, I'm reflecting this because I've chosen to use the Tarot of Vampires, which has fast become one of my absolute favourite decks. And today I'm combining that with the Oracle of the Dragon Fae by Lucy Cavendish, which is another very interesting kind of eternal creature deck. And I'm also using my Gothic Tarot by Joseph Vargo as well. And I think these three are going to make quite an interesting energy together. So our first card is the Four of Grails, and it has this rather iconic, if you like, image of the vampire feasting on the maiden. And it's interesting, this one, because as I read about this card as well, because the imagery was so unusual that I wanted to just get a feel for, in a sense, what the author thought of this card as well, which, it has to be said, is something I don't normally do. And what was kind of interesting here was he mentioned one phrase, which is structure of emotion, which makes sense in a way, because fours are about structure. You have, if you like, the home with the Four of Wands. You have a kind of physical security with Four of Pentacles. You have a kind of a security in rest with the Four of Swords. Four of Cups, Four of Grails, is a kind of emotional security. It's almost like we've reached a place where we feel more secure, we feel more able to relax emotionally, and perhaps indulge as well. There's a real sense of indulgence of passions here. And interestingly, if you can see on the wall, we have the chalice, or the grail, which has almost become like an incense censer. And it did give me an interesting thought, actually, because if you take water in a cup, or indeed in an oil burner, and you put a few drops of oil in it and then light a candle underneath it, the water, when mixed with that fire element, evaporates, and you get the fragrance that you've used spread throughout the room. And that's what this reminds me of. It's actually mixing the water of emotion with the fire of passion. So we get this kind of steam. You get this kind of steaminess, in a sense. So there is a possibility today that we could be looking at things from a very, very passionate, emotional standpoint. And there could be, as I say, a potential to overindulge, which does bear a little bit of thinking about. One other thing that strikes me as well is, I mentioned in the numerology we have a day of the moon. That is reflected in this card because the pendant that the maiden is wearing is a crescent moon. So it's worth bearing that in mind as well. The moon can be very intuitive, and it can really shine a light on things, but it can also be a little bit deceiving. So it's worth being careful in terms of how we express our emotions, how we express our passions, and whether we sort of let them have a bit of freedom, or whether we just keep quite a long leash on them. Now, moving to our oracle card today, we have Gaia's Dragon, and this is a very interesting image because it shows the dragon above, and then underneath it shows Gaia as a kind of sort of pregnant woman in a sense. And the idea here is that we have a union. The tagline actually says divine union, but we have a union of opposites. We have a kind of a synthesis of opposites, a balance between the two. And it's that balance that really strikes me with this. Balancing our thoughts, balancing our feelings, balancing our responses today. And in a sense, the union part of it I find kind of interesting because to me what that says is that we often think of ourselves as being very separate from each other. But it's worth bearing in mind that in actual fact, or certainly on an emotional level, also on a spiritual level, we're all far more interconnected than a lot of us really give credit for. So do be aware how your emotions and how you communicate, because I'm very drawn to the fact that even though this card is extremely green, on the camera it's coming up as very blue, which to me says throat chakra communication. So do be very aware of how your interactions with others may affect them today. Now we move to our final card, which is the Knave of Cups. And if we ever wanted confirmation of the other numerological influence, which is the Hermit, this is it, because this is the card in the Suit of Cups that is all about soul searching, it's all about introspection, it's all about looking very, very deeply within ourselves, longing for things and really looking deeply into those longings and looking into those things that we want. And it's a very, very strong card of intuition as well. So do be aware that there could be a lot of that kind of soul searching and deep feeling going on today. And interestingly, we have a raven just speaking into the knave's ear, speaking into the gargoyle's ear, and passing messages. So it could well be that as we get onto a deep enough level, we actually are in a position to receive messages and to receive wisdom once we actually get down to that level of solitude and level of quiet. So let's do a little recap. And it's kind of interesting how everything's sort of tied up today. We have the Four of Grails, which speaks of our emotions, it speaks of emotional structure and emotional security, and in a sense being in a position where we can let go a little bit emotionally, but being aware that when we mix our emotions, water, with our passions, fire, we get this kind of steamy effect. So it really can, it can be a very pleasant thing, just in the sense that, you know, frankincense oil can be very, very pleasant if used in the right quantities, but if allowed to become overpowering, it can actually be quite unpleasant. So it's worthwhile just keeping a check on our excesses today and trying to keep emotionally in balance, which really speaks here as well. We have a card that is all about balance, balancing ourselves and also balancing our interactions with others and being aware that we're all connected, and what we do and how we act affects others. And then finally we have a card indicating very deep feeling, very deep searching, deep down inside, looking at our heart's desires, looking at, in a sense, what makes us us. And there's a degree of longing there, there's a degree of seeing the things that we finally ultimately want and thinking to ourselves, well, how do we get there? And as I say, there's a very strong intuitive sense with this card as well. So I hope you've enjoyed these cards of the day, and what has turned out to be, in a lot of ways, quite a deep spiritual and emotional reading today, rather than something that is more physical and practical. Please feel free to leave me some comments and let me know how these themes interact with your day today, and how you have dealt with your deep emotions, with your passions, your desires, with your, in a sense, hopes and wishes, and your interactions with others. Please also feel free to check out my website, www.theseerscave.webs.com, for more information about myself, my tools, and the readings that I offer. I want to wish everyone a really happy, blessed, emotionally fulfilling, and satisfying day today, whatever you do, and love, light, blessings, and freeth to you all.